and intense pressures on the health and defence budgets. Does this mean he will actually put his hand in his pocket? Chancellor, I'll come on to that in a second. But can I start by asking you about this poisoning in Salisbury? If it's proved, and I say if it is proved to be an action of the Russian state, how serious is that for our relationship with the Russian government?
Well, first of all, as you say, this is a police investigation. It will be evidence-led, and we must go where the evidence takes us. So we have to allow the police investigation to take its course. But if there were to be an involvement of a foreign state evidenced by this investigation, then obviously that would be very serious indeed, and the government would respond appropriately. You
might have heard Marina Litvinenko suggesting that last time round the response wasn't nearly strong enough. And in that context, I wonder what you think now about the Magnitsky Act proposal, so-called, for much tougher visa restrictions and financial restrictions on named individuals.
Well, the proposals that were put forward actually create a power that we already have. The Home Secretary already has a power to exclude individuals from the UK if she believes that their presence here is not conducive to our national security or the public good. So it's not strictly necessary, but we're seeking to reach an accommodation with those who've put this amendment forward. Let's see if we can come to a proposal which works for everybody.
OK. You were there as Foreign Secretary at the end of that Litvinenko inquiry, and you summoned in the Russian ambassador at the time. Marina Litvinenko suggests that what you did was not nearly tough enough. What's your message to her?
Well, we did. The inquiry, of course, took some time, and it was some time after the events before we had the evidence from the inquiry. But we took appropriate steps. We took measures which are still in place today. But
of course, kicked out a couple of diplomats. That was about all.
But of course, the Russians have not complied with their international obligations, despite being members of the Security Council. They have continued to protect those who we seek to extradite in respect of the murder of Mr. Litvinenko.
And yet, in a sense, they are laughing at us in this country. They still think that this is a place where they can do what they like without any serious repercussions. And London is still one of the prime places for Russian money to arrive. Do you need to look at the whole thing again?
Well, I think the police inquiry and the depth and detail, the vast resources that have been deployed, and the high-level assets that we have to be able to make these analyses show that nobody is laughing at us. This is a very serious investigation that's going on. Let's see where it leads us.
Your party has taken massive donations from Russian oligarchs and others. Do you think it's time to hand them back?
Well, look, there are very strict rules about donations to political parties. Only British citizens who are on the electoral register here can make donations to political parties. All donations are carefully vetted. They're reported to the Electoral Commission. They're recorded publicly.
The facts have changed. Isn't it time to change your mind?
Well, look, I think there are people in this country who are British citizens who are of Russian origin. I don't think we should taint them, we should tar them with Putin's brush. We should recognise that people come to this country from many places. They become British citizens, they live under UK law, and they should have full participation rights in our society once they're British citizens.
Light at the end of the tunnel, a turning point for the economy. You've given lots of examples about wage growth. You've talked about the effect, finally ending the austerity years of paying back the budget day by day by day, and all of that. It feels like a really, really important moment.
Well, there is light at the end of the tunnel, because what we're about to see is debt starting to fall after it's been growing for 17 continuous years. That's a very important moment for us. But we are still in the tunnel at the moment. We have to get debt down. We've got all sorts of other things we want to do. We've taken a balanced approach over the last couple of fiscal events, using flexibility that we had to continue paying down debt, but also to provide additional support to our public services, to invest in Britain's future, and to reduce taxes for families and small businesses who are feeling the pressure.
Well, for the 11 million people about to be hit by the next round of welfare cuts, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Are you going to be able to help them in any way at all?
Well, look, there's been quite a lot of speculation in the media about what the OBR numbers will be when they're published on Tuesday. I suggest we wait until we see the numbers. This is not a fiscal event in itself. I won't be making tax or spending announcements on Tuesday. What I will be doing is signalling some areas where we want to consult ahead of the budget in the autumn. We should be very careful about looking at single sets of figures, 1 quarter or 2 quarters. We need to look at what's happening sustainably in the economy. And if there is the flexibility, the space to do something, then we'll decide in the autumn how we're going to use that. But we will continue to take a balanced approach, addressing the debt problem, investing in Britain's future, reducing taxes for hard-working families, and putting money into our public services.
Simple question. Is austerity over?
Well, most people take that to be a reference to the public sector pay cap. Yeah. And we've removed the 1% pay cap on public sector pay. As you know, unions and management right now are in discussions on a settlement for nurses and other Agenda for Change staff in the NHS, which I hope will lead to a pay settlement which satisfies workers in the NHS, but is also fair to taxpayers because it tackles some of the challenges that we have in the NHS workforce and makes it more effective and efficient. The
working families affected by these welfare changes, for instance, £200 a year worse off on average, that feels like no light at all at the end of the tunnel for them. Can I ask you also about local authorities? Because all across the country, you know, Tory local authorities as well as Labour ones are screaming with pain. They feel that austerity has been pushed absolutely to the possible limits and that they are now, in the words of one of your colleagues, facing a financial precipice. Isn't it something you absolutely have to do ahead of these local elections to give them a little bit of relief at last?
Well, just to be clear, this is not a fiscal event on Tuesday, so I won't be making fiscal announcements. Local authorities have well over £200 billion of core spending power over the 5-year period from 2015 to 2020. They've got reserves of £23 billion. That's higher than in 2010, £8 billion higher than in 2010. But look, local authorities have done an incredible job in delivering efficiencies over the last 3 years. And of course they're under some pressures, we understand that. At the spring budget last year I put an extra £2 billion into social care because of the pressures there. Local authority, we've also given them given them greater flexibility through the precept in the recent local government settlement, so that local authorities now have £9 billion worth of additional dedicated spending for social services over the next 3 years.
That is an actuarial answer to people who are screaming with pain in terms of the system being absolutely a breaking point.
And look, we understand that there are pressures in the system. We look at these all the time. We discuss them with colleagues across local government and indeed in spending departments across Whitehall. And as I said, when we get to the autumn budget, we'll look at the numbers then. I'll be paving the way in this autumn budget 2018 for a spending review in 2019, which will look at public spending from 2020 onwards, what the total envelope should be, how we allocate it between individual departments and indeed local government.
You're pushing off the good news until nearer the general election. Can I ask you about another really important issue on the Tory backbenches, which is defence spending? Yes. Tobias Ellwood, one of your own ministers, has said 2% is just not sustainable these days. We have to go up to around 3% because of what's happened to the pound and the dollar. You know, the entire military system is in real problems. They need more tanks, they need more planes, and a lot of your colleagues on the backbenches are determined that you're going to have to do something for them.
Well, look, I was Defence Secretary for nearly 3 years, and I yield to no one in my admiration for the armed forces and what they do to keep Britain safe. And I also understand...
They need a bit of cash as well as admiration.
I also understand the huge complexity of the defence budget, some very long-term projects that are at the cutting edge of technology. But some of the media talk as if defence was being cut. Let's just be clear about the facts here. Well, defence will receive more than £1 billion extra in each year of this Parliament. It's the fastest growing resource budget in Whitehall. So defence isn't being cut by any means. Now, I accept that there are pressures on defence, including foreign exchange pressures, because quite a lot of the military equipment we use is bought in US dollars. And the Prime Minister has announced a defence modernisation programme where she and I and the Defence Secretary are working closely together on looking at these challenges. And of course we're committed to making sure that Britain is always properly defended.
But it sounds like yet more jam tomorrow. Can I read you something that Nick Timothy, your close friend, said? Mr Hammond must now declare an end to the age of austerity. The government has achieved its surplus. It can invest in the economy for the long term. It can start to increase public spending.
Well, I'm afraid Nick Timothy is ignoring the debt. We have a debt of £1.8 trillion, 86.5% of our GDP. All the international organisations recognise that that is higher than a safe level. And this isn't some ideological issue, Andrew. It's about making sure that we have the capacity to respond to any future shock to the economy. There will be economic cycles in the future. We need to be able to respond to them without taking our debt over 100% of GDP.
John Redwood, no kind of softy on these matters, wrote in a blog this week that basically the debt, in terms of if you analyse it properly, is easily sustainable, and really suggested that the austerity programme was a political choice, not an essential economic one.
Well, with the greatest respect to John Redwood, I think he's wrong. We need to get our debt lower. I think most people in this country would be horrified to be reminded that we have £65,000 worth of public debt for every household in this country. But look, what I did when I became Chancellor was change the fiscal rules. I said, we will tackle the debt, we have to tackle the debt, but we will spread out the time over which we do it a bit longer, creating a bit more flexibility so that at the same time as tackling the debt, we will also invest in Britain's future, we will also put money into Britain's public services, and we'll relieve Britain's families and small businesses with some tax breaks. That's what we've done. That's what we intend to go on doing, being balanced in our approach. It's wrong to say, as some fiscal hawks say, it's wrong to say that every penny of capacity we have has to go to paying down the debt, but it's equally wrong, as John McDonnell says, that every penny should go into additional public spending. We need a balanced approach.
I must ask you about Brexit. It's clearly going to be an incredibly complex negotiation. The Prime Minister said when I was talking to her last week that, we wouldn't get the full amount of access to all markets we've got at the moment. You have a very, very complicated, grindingly complicated, difficult negotiation over the future of the City of London and financial services coming up. You spoke about that this week. Is it worth it?
Yes. Financial services is a very important part of our economy. But it's also...
Not the financial services negotiation. Is Brexit worth it?
Oh, the whole thing.
Yes, the whole thing.
The British people have decided. The British people decided that we are leaving the European Union, and that's what we're doing. Our job is to make sure that we get the best possible deal for Britain, that we make a smart Brexit, a Brexit that works for Britain, British jobs, British prosperity, British businesses. And that's what we're all about.
Do you accept that we're going to take some kind of economic hit, as Mr Tusk has said, and as a lot of these impact assessments suggest?
Well, look, Mr Tusk is a negotiator, and I listened to him carefully on Wednesday, and he didn't say anything that I wouldn't expect a skilled and experienced negotiator to say at the beginning of a negotiation. He basically said the deal will have to contain none of the things you want and all of the things that we want. Well, that's an opening negotiating position. I recognise it well.
OK, looking at what you have said about the importance of financial services, banking and insurance in particular, you have said again and again and again, this has to be part of a fair deal. Can I ask you, is this at last a government red line?
No, we've said, the Prime Minister said very clearly in her speech that the way to negotiate successfully with the Europeans is not to threaten, not to talk about walking away from tables or anything like that, but to engage, to talk, to discuss these things, to explore the options. The reason I think that financial services has to be part of a deal is firstly the shape of Britain's economy. Services are a very important part of our economy, and a fair deal will need to be one that covers services as well as goods. And secondly, because the financial services system in London is an asset of Europe as a whole. It serves the European economy as a whole. £1.1 trillion worth of loans to European companies facilitated through the City of London. A vast proportion of Europe's financial services business transacted through the City of London.
But you know that they are thinking differently, and the French in particular are saying you're not going to get this kind of deal. So if we get a deal that does not include financial services, that would be an unfair deal, that would be a bad deal.
Well, I don't accept your premise, Andrew, because I think we will get a deal that includes financial services. The question is how financial services are included, what the kind of access is that we're able to negotiate reciprocally, because there are many European banks operating in London, of course, as part of London's financial services hub.
OK, well, at least we now know what the government wants out of this negotiation. The Prime Minister's speech, your speech and many others have set out a much more detailed prospectus for the country. Have you modelled the economic effects of that?
Not yet. We haven't.
Why not?
We haven't even embarked on the negotiation yet. The next step in this process at the European Council later this month is hopefully to agree the implementation period so that businesses know that they can plan over the next 3 years with certainty. Then we will also get the guidelines from the European Union for the next phase of negotiation. Then we start talking with them about the shape of a future partnership, which will cover not just economics, trade and investment, but also security, domestic security and external security.
So modelling tomorrow, like jam tomorrow. But it
Well,
will come.
once we know what the deal looks like, then we will certainly model it.
All right, Chancellor, thank you very much indeed.